I'm Chan Storlin, and welcome to the Oink Only in Korea podcast, brought to you by KoreaFM.net, an online radio station featuring independent musicians and original podcast content from the Korean Peninsula. As always, I'm joined today by Travis Hull, the man behind the Only in Korea Facebook group. And today we'll be discussing some bad times that have hit the Facebook group of Oink that have led to some administrator changes. And then we'll also finish up the podcast by discussing Joseon, a term that has become known for describing the difficulties of living here in South Korea. Of course, South Korea is a great country. I enjoy living here, but there's a downside, I would say, especially if you're Korean. So we'll be discussing that as well. But Travis, how are you doing? It's very cold.
It is. I was just going to comment on the weather because that's what people seem to be commenting on these days. I think I saw it's supposed to get this weekend to like negative 17 Celsius. So that's pretty cold for us here in Korea.
The funny thing is I live in an apartment with my girlfriend, and it's a rather new building, so we don't have this problem. But on Facebook, the last couple of days, I've just been reading these sad stories of my friends whose pipes froze or like burst.
That sounds terrible. That's expensive.
So yeah, so they don't have hot water. They can't take a shower. You know, my friend wrote that she had to boil some water and sponge bathe herself, which was an interesting way to start the day, I'm sure. So we don't have any of those problems. And truthfully, actually, you know, growing up in Iowa and you growing up in South Dakota, you know, it gets cold there, colder than here in South Korea, I would say, every winter. I don't remember pipes freezing or pipes bursting. Maybe we had some special stuff. Yeah, maybe they just have crappy pipes in these buildings. But yeah, in fact, I'm friends with lots of people back home in Iowa. If their pipes are bursting or freezing over, I would see it. So it's not happening.
Yeah. I think it's partly a design issue here where they must not insulate the pipes enough and they just freeze and burst. Especially, it seems like it happens in older buildings quite a bit. Well,
I guess that means when we talk about Joseon, there's another topic we have to bring up. That'll be the horrible pipe design of South Korea. But once again, just like last week, the topics for today were chosen by votes from the members of the Oink Only in Korea Facebook group. And we also post a link each week there where you can leave us an anonymous voicemail message to comment on any of the topics we'll be discussing, or even a different topic that you'd like to bring up that we're not talking about. And you can give us some feedback about the show. And just like last week, I'll change the voice, so no one will know exactly what you're saying. So yeah, we'd love to get some comments like that. And hopefully we'll get some of those in the future weeks. So first off, Travis, I'm going to rely on you a lot for this conversation, but I'll throw in here as well. There's been some trolling, which I'm sure is something that happens all the time in Oink, because that just happens online anywhere. But there's been some specific stuff that's happened in the last couple of weeks, and that actually led to adding 2 new administrators to the group. So why don't we start talking about that? Could you just weave us a general image of what's been taking place?
Okay, we've kind of just noticed in the last few weeks that there are members in our group who are, saying they're one thing and then there's something else. Basically, they're fake accounts, just like by known members who've either been banned or kicked out of the group for trolling in the past.
But a fake account itself is not necessarily a disqualifier, because there are people who are part of Oink who only have fake accounts because they don't want people to know who they are.
That's true. It's not if you keep like one persona, but there's several members who have probably 3 or 4 accounts in the group who are just constantly trolling the group or trolling other members of the group.
So it's okay to have a fake account as long as you're not an a-hole. Like, just keep it together and it's okay.
Basically, I mean, there's a guy, I'm going to mention him specifically, a guy that we know is a troll who we let in. This guy named Jarvis Jackson, who kind of portrays himself as a fat Caucasian man experiencing Korea. He talks about soju a lot, talks about drinking at the convenience store. And we kind of let him go because people find it humorous, but there's also people...
he's generally well-liked, right?
So, I mean, that one's totally cool with us so far. But there's other members. There was one, it was supposed to be a female who was actually a male who we kicked out of the group, who was baiting one of our admin team into he was PMing her trying to get a date. And she totally exposed him to the whole, community. It is kind of, I thought it was kind of sleazy of our admin to trying to be hitting up the members, but at the same time, it was we found out, we found the picture of the woman on several different Korean sites. And so it was totally fake, but it also shows how gullible, some of our admin can be, when we let people in you're going to be more likely probably to let like a woman with a beautiful picture in the group than someone who, looks normal or
someone who looks normal.
That's not true. I mean,
Travis digging his grave, just digging his grave
get...
with all these great comments. Someone who looks normal. Okay, well, so you've had some admin troubles. You've had some people who are trolling. Now, obviously, you have an admin system in place to try to stop these things. So why do you think it didn't work? What failed here? Was there just not enough people? It's probably a tough job to sit there and sift through the comments.
I mean, and as I've mentioned before, you go to bed at night and Facebook has recently implemented a policy where they allow you to reply within a reply. So like someone makes a comment, you can reply within that. And a lot of times that's where like all the drama goes down and we might not notice.
Because you got to click on the comments to see all the...
so you'd have to click on each individual comment. And when there's like 20 to 30 posts being put up a day, it just gets to be impossible to like see everything, which, is why we encourage people, if there's something going on, to tag one of us, so... Of course, if you see something, tag us and we'll gladly deal with it. But if we don't know what's happening, it's just impossible to deal with.
So if you're an Oink member and someone's bothering you doing something inappropriate or you just want to get the attention of someone, the admins are obviously listed in the page. You can click and see who they are. Tag their name and just be like, hey, Travis, check this out. Hey, blah, 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 check this out. That's what people should do.
And our admins right now I'll just name them off. It's Daniel Lee, Travis Hull, Deja Simpson, Chloe Kawa, and Jason Chisholm. I think that's 5 of us. And John Powelson. So there should be five of us that will be happy to assist you if you have any problems on Oink. But again, we don't want to get too involved. We think everyone should be adults at this age. I mean, there should be...
Well, Travis, it's the internet. That's not really going to work.
I mean, yeah. If you put us in a room together, like we have had trolls show up to like the meetups, and they're totally like,
dressed as a troll.
No, they weren't dressed as they admitted to being like trollish on Oink, but when you see them in person, no one acts like that in person. It's just the anonymous.
Yeah, that's the problem with the internet, is that people who are like very decent human beings will just like say horrible things, which is why I don't mean to belittle anyone's pain or like, belittle someone's fear of someone online. But I've said this before in different circumstances, but when like just a celebrity says something and then he or she gets, people tweet like, oh, I'm going to go to your house and I'm going to kill you, or like look behind you or something like that. Yes, it's scary. And yes, maybe there should be some precautions that are taken, but like, when I was 12 and the internet was a newer thing than it is now, my friend and I, we would sit at his computer in rural Iowa and we would just make stupid comments like in chat rooms and stuff. We never were like, we're going to go to your house and murder you. But, we were just like 12-year-olds like killing time. So, there are things that people say that they're not going to do, but it's very hard to tell what are just people's stupid comments versus like, oh, this guy's a psycho and he's going to come to my house and kill me. But yeah. I just say that whenever something happens, like, it's like when there's like a bomb threat in the United States and they close down like an entire city's school. Some city, there's like a bomb threat in 2 different areas of the United States. One shut down the entire school district and the other one didn't. And it turned out like the bomb threat was just like completely obviously fake, and like they could have just done a little bit of research and it would have been fine. It's important to not just take everything on face value. You have to look into it at sometimes.
I think that what you're referring to is the bomb threat was in LA and they shut down the schools, and then New York also had a bomb threat and they determined it was like a hoax.
Yeah.
And they kept their schools open. But yeah, I mean, we had last week we removed 2 guys who were threatening to meet in Ansan to fight each other. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
I think I saw that. Yes, I took a picture of that.
Come fight me in Ansan. I mean, it's just like really,
that's a little specific. I think that's a good move. Yeah.
I mean, also it seems like there's an uptick in this sort of behavior. A lot of English teachers are on vacation right now, so they're like,
that's
bored,
what
it's
it
cold.
is. This is like spring break for English teachers.
Yeah, so they're just sitting around Korea, like, in the cold, just like, okay, I'll go on the internet and fight someone right now. And
fighting someone in Ansan sounds like a way to warm up. This is going to be good. Okay, so you think maybe it's just the time we're in. It's also school break time. So, students have some time, teachers have some time. Maybe that's adding to it. Is there anything that's going to change in Oink to try to prevent something like this from happening in the future? You've obviously added some new admins, but is there any general change to the policy of Oink? You on the wall, it says better wording than this, but it's basically like, don't be racist, don't be an ass, don't do all these things. But at the same time, the description of the group also says, like, if you can't take a joke, maybe this isn't the group for you. So you have kind of a line you have to walk. It's not so absolute.
No, it's not. And a lot of time that's determined by admin. Like last night, there was a guy who we warned for making fun of someone's name, which we thought was inappropriate. We thought it was like, a bit racist to make fun of someone's name. It was a Korean person. And the person basically, we warned them about it in the comments, and they left the group and blocked all the admins. So it was kind of like, okay, so we're trying to be more public about, what we think is tolerable and what we don't think should be allowed. So we're trying to call people out directly in the threads rather than messaging them personally. And that's just to be more transparent with our members.
Well, so you're also trying to publicly shame people. This is
no, I mean, well, we're hoping that will lead to a little more transparency, and then people have kind of a better idea about what we tolerate and what we don't in the group. And again, anytime, I mean, the group is based on satire. So anytime there's satire involved, there's a fine line that you can walk there where it's funny or where it's, inappropriate. And a lot of members have trouble, determining that line, and we hope to help them kind of guide them in the right direction anyway. We're not trying to limit freedom of speech. We're just trying to limit personal attacks, racist behavior, like obvious trolling, that kind of stuff. So it's not like we're trying to limit what people are saying. We're trying to limit, abusive behavior.
Well, Travis, as a public service, because that's really what Korea FM is just a public service, let's do a little bit of role playing here, and let's see if I cross that line. Okay, so let's what's something you posted recently to Oink that I could use as an example? You post it and then I make a comment. What's something you just posted that might be maybe a little controversial, or you could see something happening with the comments?
Let me see. Hold on. Okay, yesterday I posted it was a tweet by a Korean journalist who, Bloomberg came out this week with the story that Korea is number one in innovation, and this guy decided to remind people that Korea is also 39th in productivity. So you have innovation with no productivity whatsoever.
Okay, so let's say you post that number one in innovation, but very, very low in productivity. And then I come up here and I say, yeah, Korea sucks. I hate Korea. That is okay, right? Because I'm not talking about anyone specifically. I'm just saying I don't like Korea.
That would be fine. I mean, you'd basically open yourself up to a fight if you did that, but we probably wouldn't ban you for that. But if you, you went further and someone responded to that and one said, well, yeah, you suck too, then we might.
Okay, well, let's escalate it then. Okay, so then Travis loses his cool. He's been drinking a little bit, and he says, well, Chance, you suck. And I say, okay, Travis, well, your mom sucks.
I don't know. At that point, if we noticed it, we'd probably monitor it and see where it went.
Okay, but that's okay. So that's fine. You're just monitoring it at that point.
No, it's not. You shouldn't be personally attacking people, but there's times, where, okay, there's one personal attack and then nothing happens. But when it goes back and forth and you start getting like 50 comments of personal attacks upon each other, then we'll step in and we'll probably delete both people because we just don't want to deal with it.
Okay, so unless it's something blatant, like, promoting violence or something that's like blatantly racist, you need more than one comment. You're looking at the escalation that's popping up.
Yeah, you basically are looking for like a flame war between two people or a group of people against one other person. And that kind of behavior is what we're looking for. I mean, and we do notice it, but it is getting harder and harder as the group grows.
And so I think what people should take out of this this nice role play here, thank you, Travis, is that word it very well, attack someone very quickly, and then say something really nice so they forget. So this is the guide to Oink. You got to make a small jab and then move on to something else. I think that,
or if you can step in with humor after your jab and lighten the mood a little bit, usually that goes a long way too. People are people, so if you can, you can attack someone a little bit personally, but you also have to like be there to like let them know that you're joking and they shouldn't take it personally. And that usually goes a long way.
So your mom sucks, smiley face, wink. There we are.
Yeah, and then people usually are okay.
Okay, so this is how Oink operates. This is like, once again, it's not a black or white situation. It's a gray area a lot of the time. So now you have the administrator change. Is Oink the same way that it was before? Is the goal the same way? It's just a place to foster communication, or are you also trying to take it in a new direction alongside some of these recent changes we've just discussed?
Well, basically, I added people. The admins I removed 2 admins and I think I added 3 this time. The people I added are in Korea, so that's kind of what I'm looking for. The 2 admins I got rid of were in the States, so we're kind of looking for people who are willing to post more content into the group and also be a little more active in, I wouldn't say policing, but at least checking out the threads to see what's going on. So I know a lot of people think Oink is like some negative group, but that's really not the aim. That was never the aim. So it's not, I wouldn't describe it as a place to like come and bitch. It's like more of a place to come and enjoy and take in Korea rather than a place to complain about Korea, even though it still is that, and I still allow that. I just say that's not the main focus, and it never really has been for me. And if people think that, they've misinterpreted my whole idea on the group. So
yeah, you post a lot of articles every day, and a lot of them are positive. A lot of them are negative. I mean, it's pretty objective. Like, if you post something, it's not like, ooh, is that a positive? The type of things you post, like it's easy to see kind of where it's going. But the ones that get a lot of the comments are the ones that are skewed a little bit more toward negativity. So it's really what you make of it. You can choose what you want to.
And that's true with media, though, right? The negative stories always get more attention than positive stories. So I mean, if I post a positive story about Korea, likely it'll get like 1 like and maybe a comment. But if I post something negative, Korea's the 39th in the OECD at productivity, that's sure to get like 40 comments from people who are naysayers, because people kind of just thrive off the negativity. It seems like that's one of the reasons Oink is growing, even though, my intention wasn't to make a group that's like negative or down on Korea at all.
Yeah, the dark side of the force is strong, Travis. That's right. Okay, well, now let's move into our final topic. As mentioned before, Hell Chosen. So here's a description of what exactly we mean by this term. This is from a very great website. I encourage you to check it out. It's KoreaExpose.com. So there they did an article on this, and it mentioned a few different things. Quote, more and more South Koreans in their 20s and 30s are calling the gap between the two realities of South Korea, one available only to those from the right backgrounds and another that is experienced by everyone else, Hell Chosen, this term. And there's even a website and a map called Hell Chosen, an infernal hellfire peninsula. So according to this map, being born in South Korea is tantamount to basically entering hell, where one is immediately enslaved by a highly regulated system that dictates an entire course of life. Onerous education and service in the abusive military are the norm, and the only goal for the young is to become servants of the mighty corporations that rule the realm from its heart. Those born into wealth and power simply skirt this whole system by drawing on resources provided to them by their families. However, for commoners, failing to enter the corporate world means having to wallow in the pool of joblessness, though some take refuge in the fortress of bureaucrats by taking the civil servant examination. Yet the ultimate destiny for the majority is to run one of South Korea's ubiquitous fried chicken joints, considered the least prestigious and profitable form of business, whether because there's no other job or one has been forcibly retired in their 40s. Then, at the end of this long, torturous journey, one meets death at Topgol Park, the symbol of elderly poverty in downtown Seoul, frequented by crowds of seniors who gather to kill time and eat free lunch dispensed by charity organizations. The only escape is to become self-employed and eke out a self-sustaining but respectable bandit-like existence in the margin of society, or wade through the forest of immigration and leave South Korea altogether, finding freedom in countries beyond hell. So, Travis, as you can tell from that, it's kind of a mixture of like Lord of the Rings and just the facts of living in South Korea. Obviously, it's not that simple, but it kind of gets to the heart. A lot of people are forced into early retirement now from these big companies. People will go to school for years and years and not be able to get a job. And a lot of people are just kind of leaving South Korea altogether. There's been some recent news reports, and they're basically just rehashes of old reports, because I've investigated this before for some interviews that I've done. Lots of young Koreans, they just want to leave and they want to go abroad. They want to go to North America. They want to go to Europe. And then also with all this, aside from, this tale that's been woven to us by KoreaExposé.com, you of course have the low birth rate in Korea. No one wants to have kids. It's so expensive. High suicide rate because, everyone's studying. There's so much pressure to succeed. And elderly poverty in Korea. About 50% of Koreans in old age live at or below the poverty line. So for anyone who's spent time in Korea, other than just, visiting for a vacation, a lot of this is not going to be completely new. But if you don't work in a certain industry, or if you don't, perhaps talk to people who experience these types of things as a foreigner, you might not know about this. So, Travis, let's kind of discuss this right now. You're a teacher, so you definitely know first off about the amount of pressure that's on students.
Yeah, I mean, I'm teaching basically corporate classes right now, so I see a lot of especially with the younger guys kind of going through that, where they're trying to kind of eke out this existence in a company, and maybe if they were there, they had been in their father's generation, they would have been guaranteed a job for life. But now it's not necessarily like that anymore. And I think a lot of younger people are finding, that to be the case.
But before you worked with kind of older Koreans, you've worked with like school age kids, right? So, I mean, they're also under pressure. It's not once you become an adult.
Sure. It basically starts from the time, that you're in elementary. I say once you get out of kindergarten, you're going to go through this rigorous process where you're going to school, and then after school, you're attending hagwons, and then you're coming home at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and you're doing it all the way through high school. And then if you're a guy, after that, there's military service, and then you're expected to get a job in a upstanding corporation, and those companies just don't have enough jobs to provide everyone in Korean society with, so if you get into a middle tier company, you're kind of considered a semi-failure already, which makes your prospects for marriage and your future career even more difficult to achieve.
And so here in South Korea, these are, obviously negatives, all this pressure, joblessness, this Hell Chosun description talked about, having to work at like one of the word it used, ubiquitous chicken restaurants that are all over the place here. But I got to tell you, as someone who's lived abroad in a couple of different places, lived in Germany for a year, lived in Colombia for a couple of years, I'm from the United States, and obviously I've lived here in Korea for the last 2 years. Maybe you would disagree with me, but I think that there are benefits of Hell Chosun as well. Wonderful transportation here, obviously tons of technology. I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be some change to try to help people out, but would you agree with me that, there are benefits to this system?
I guess one thing, if you're looking at it from the eyes of a Korean person, might be, you do have the benefit of being able to live at home until you're in your 30s to get, if you're going to get married, which, it sounds horrible for a Western person usually, but for a Korean person, that could be, very beneficial because you cannot, a lot of people just cannot afford to pay the rent here. So, being given free lodging and, cleaning services and food by your mother and father, I guess that could kind of be a benefit, but at the same time...
No, but that's more like Korean culture. If all this pressure went away, people would still live at home because it's just the way things work here. In Germany, my guest brother lived at home for a very, very long time. And, when I lived in Colombia, almost everyone I knew lived at home. You'd have, even more than here in Korea, in Colombia, you'd have like multiple generations in the home, and they would just live there. That's just how it was, and it worked for them. I'm talking about more tangible benefits of this, like, everyone in Korea is educated. Like I said, public transportation is amazing. I think that, especially after living in a country like Colombia, where education is not as important, and the amount of public resources are not as great as here in South Korea, people in Colombia that I worked with as a Peace Corps volunteer had lots and lots of free time, and I think they're always ranked near the top, if not the very top of the world when it comes to being happy. But there's a lot of poverty in Colombia as well, and I saw a lot of suffering. Not to say that there's not suffering in South Korea, but, it's a little different.
Yeah, I think it's a different kind of suffering. Like we don't really see it as foreigners, or maybe you do, depending on what your job is. But as a teacher, there's no way you're going to be expected to stay at the office from, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. But, Korean employees at big companies here are regularly expected to do that. So I don't think we always see that suffering as foreigners, but it doesn't, take away from the fact that it exists. It's, it's just a different form. It's not that people are poor. It's, they're you're what I mean, I guess I would say they're wasting their lives, and a lot of times doing nothing. They're just waiting for their boss to leave the office, So it's just,
But I've talked with people about that, and I've done a little bit of research on that. It's a little different than some of these other things we're talking about. For instance, working for a Korean company, the idea that you just have to stay there, it's because it's for show. Like if everyone is there and, they're sitting at their desk, it shows, at least from an eye perspective, that, or it shows just from, if you're standing there, that, oh, everyone must be working because they're doing lots of things. But Korea's productivity doesn't match that. Just because people are sitting there at their desk doesn't mean they're actually getting anything done. There are other countries that have much more productivity than Korea, where people spend less time at the office. I don't know that that's necessarily tied in with some of these other things. I think you could kind of piecemeal approach with it. I think you can kind of have a piecemeal approach with this, where you could say some things are necessary, other things don't help anyone. And if you remove them, it would make things a little bit easier, but at the same time, it wouldn't change the entire system. So if you made it like you don't have to spend every second of the day at the company, there would still be all these other pressures to have a good job, and there would still be all these pressures to go to a good school, but you might have a little bit more free time. I don't know that it's all or nothing. I feel like you could make some changes here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but the work hours have got to be part of it, right? So it seems like to me the general definition of hell Joseon is just being generally unhappy with the situation that's going on in Korea. So if some of these things were adjusted, such as work hours or all the pressure on high school students to become successful, some of that stuff, that might increase the overall level of happiness in Korea. So I think it's all tied in. It's all kind of tied in together. All these life pressures that Koreans feel they face.
What do you think Korea would be like, though, if it wasn't held Chosun? Would it be Korea? I mean, like I said, all the great benefits of living here in Korea, I think if some of this stuff changed, and once again, I'm not saying that, kids should be forced to do all this schooling to the point that Korea has the highest suicide rate in the world. But like I said, there are benefits to this system. And I think if you started peeling some of this back, Korea would change. It's not like it would stay the same.
That's probably true. But I mean, at the same time, if you look back on Korea in the 1920s, you can see that it's come a long way in terms of like worker productivity. If you look at like an agricultural society versus what it's become now, I mean, there's got to be some sort of middle balance between the extremes that you see in Korea and like people able to have and enjoy their lives. So I think there should be the task for whoever runs the society is to find some sort of middle ground, probably.
But who runs the society here in Korea? Is it the government? Because, I mean, it's not as if the government of Korea is forcing this on people. I mean, there's the stereotype of, like, Asian mothers, what's it called, tiger moms? I mean, that's like an Asian stereotype just in general. It's not like Korea is the only place in Asia where children are forced to try to succeed, or people are forced. I mean, Japan, it has a lot of the same problems that Korea does, Korea doesn't like using Japan as a reference, but...
Who rules America? I mean, it's probably some sort of mixture between like corporate entities and the government. But, definitely the government could have some influence on some of these issues. And I know they have tried in the past to get, big companies here to focus more on, work-life balance. But, it's also on these companies to kind of, not have such rigorous standards for their employees, because millennials don't want it, and it's the same in the States.
Well, that's not necessarily true here in Korea. I mean, younger Koreans, they actually want jobs. The unemployment rate for like 20-something Koreans is a lot higher than a lot of other countries. I think it's the highest in the OECD. So I don't know that that's true. I mean, I think a lot of Koreans would take these jobs if they could get them.
Well, I don't know. I speak to executives, like I teach executives here, and a lot of them tell me that people my age are a little bit younger don't want to be pushed as hard as maybe some of these guys did when they were younger, where they were doing, 6 or 7 days a week. And he said, a lot of these guys are saying that the younger generation just don't want to do that. They want to have some sort of balance between their life and their family and their friends. Whereas these guys were just willing, because the economic situation was so bad in Korea at the time, to just, be totally devoted to their jobs. Some of these younger people can also rely a little bit on their parents, so if they're making 2.5 or 3 million won enough, it's more than enough, if they're not married. And they just don't want it anymore. That's a perception I get anyway. I'm sure there's some people out there that are very desperate for jobs, but if you have the right degree in Korea, if you've gone to a Sky University, you still can be a little bit picky.
Not really though. Not nowadays. I mean, there are countless stories that are getting put out there of people who went to very good universities and they still can't get. I mean, and a lot of people, they only want to work for the big chaebol. They only want to work for Samsung, or they only want to work for, these big companies, and they don't want to go. They don't want to leave Seoul, for instance. I mean, I know
That's true.
It's easier to get a job if you leave Seoul, but no one ever wants to. So if you went to one of the top universities and you want a job for one of the big companies here in Seoul, it's not like it was. This is, I mean, obviously I'm not Korean and I've only lived here a couple of years, but through reporting and through just other research and talking with people, it's not like it was apparently. So
No, that's true. That's true. But I think the companies are also kind of becoming more in touch with this, and like they're not expecting, the way shake every night of the week like they were maybe 15 or 10 or 15 years ago. I've heard from students that that's not really going on anymore. Maybe they'll do a way shake once every month, or so this kind of stuff. It seems like it's kind of changing a little bit, and it's one of the sources. I mean, if you stay out drinking until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, several nights a week, your productivity is going to be low, and I think companies are kind of beginning to recognize that.
Have you ever gone to a hui chic that ended at 10 or 11 o'clock? That's like when they start.
I think for these older guys, they go home.
What hui chics have you been going to?
I worked in the ESL industry. We're a tame bunch.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, that's not.
No, but I think the older guys, I teach guys in their 50s, and they go home about 10 or 11 o'clock at night at that age.
I guess it's a little different. Yeah, I've participated in some, and then also I've heard some stories. I mean, so yeah, all right. Well, to each his own. Maybe it's a different time, different place, depending on the industry. So I mean, so what's the thing that you think, if it changed, would be the big deal? I think for me, if I could change or recommend one thing be changed to lessen the pressure on Koreans, I really don't think it's work culture, and I really don't think it's some of these other things I've talked about. I think it's education. I think it all starts there and it keeps going. So I think if kids had more free time, or if there wasn't such an emphasis on studying and getting good grades when they were younger, it wouldn't be so easy for them to take that pressure and replace it with the pressure of getting a job or having to stay at work all the time. If you went from just a normal childhood existence of studying and playing, and then you went to this corporate structure of like, oh my God, I can never go home, like that would be quite a big jump. But if you go from what Koreans are facing now in education to what Koreans are facing in the office, it's the same thing. You just, change the color of the pressure. So I think education is really where it has to change, or at least I think that's where the change would work the most.
I think college in Korea should become more difficult, and high school should become easier for students, and our middle school, high school time should become easier. And they should also probably make some changes to their SAT system, where the students are allowed to take it a couple times a year and see how they do. In the States, I think I took the ACT 3 times before I was satisfied with my score, and then they let me pick.
Oh wow, man, that's more than I did.
Well, they let you pick the top score, right? Which is fine. It takes off some of the pressure off of you. I think I took it in 11th grade like 3 times, or I think once when I was a sophomore, and then twice when I was a junior, and it didn't feel any pressure at all. Which might not be a good thing, but I was still able to get into the university I wanted to get into. So.
Well, I think that'll do it for today's show. Once again, that was our topic of Joseon, and we started off, of course, with all the fun things, trolling and admin changes in the Oink Only in Korea Facebook group. So we'll end it here, Travis. Just like always, I'll speak with you next week.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks again for having me.